Freedom in that sense from enslavement, from alienation, from soulful distance from one's world enables the cultural process. And culture essentially is the continual creating of the self. Spiritual progress, in other words. Civilization, on the other hand, is the continual change in the world, or technical progress. So, in the words or the codifications of the philosophers, culture is the art of being. Civilization is the art of functioning. The reason we open with this introduction is because there is an overwhelming emphasis in the discourse of our age on the clash of civilizations. In this definition of civilization being the art of functioning, the Muslims have a diminished capacity to function within a modern ethos. So it's not that there is a clash of civilizations as much as it is a clash of a singular civilization struggling to define itself within a multi-ethnic world of its own making, under one culture of its own making, and a multitude of other cultures struggling also to define themselves in the same global context as well, whereby, as James Hillman defined, everyone in a Western context is psychologically Christian. The weaker tradition in this civilizational dialogue, in this struggle, comes from a historically unparalleled experience of conviviality and remarkable civilization. The weaker tradition. The dominant discourse comes from a tradition, on the other hand, that echoes an Augustinian ethos that treats conviviality as inherently evil, denying in the process that Islam is a pivotal component and hence is inextricable from Western heritage. The dominant discourse also has a tumultuous history where there have been horrid abuses of ecclesiastical power and authority. And because of those abuses, it was led through a Neoplatonist Renaissance, a Lutheran Reformation, and has its religious authority permanently seized by secular modernism. Islam, by virtue of the Lita'arafu challenge that we opened with, we made you nations and tribes so that you may know one another, actually ended up saving Islamic theology from the limitations of the Greek giants of thought. Because remember, Judeo-Christian heritage, essentially, theologically, exegetically, allegorically, rhetorically, borrowed and adopted the Aristotelian and Platonic model. Islam, by virtue of benefiting from the non-Western models, ended up saving its theology from following that model, and moreover, at the same time, became adept enough to comment on the books of previous traditions, not only the Greek and the Roman canon, that the translation of which facilitated the Renaissance, as is historic fact, but also to comment on the religious books of other traditions, including the Hebrew and Christian Bibles. As a matter of fact, we know from our grandparents in the scholarly tradition, of blessed memory, our forebears of blessed memory have had majalis whereby you can conceivably have an imam in one mosque, be in one place, and talk to 3 different audiences concurrently. And so he would speak in Arabic to the Arab crowd and exhort them from the Quran and Sunnah. He would speak to the Persian crowd and talk to them in their language. And then he would turn to the Jewish and Christian crowd. by their experiences. Those people who say among the females, for example, that they saw harrowing examples of fatherhood and therefore never want to be married. And of course, half the country turns upside down on this girl like she's said something heretical. Like it's haram. Marriage is my sunnah, the Prophet said. And if anybody who leaves my sunnah is not from me. Well, thank you all very much. I feel really loved in the sisterhood. And I feel that I belong to an ummah who cares and understands and really is open to... And this is part of another cultural taboo. We don't know how to deal with issues. We don't know how to deal with these concerns. And therefore, the what appears to be the most palatable remedy is just to not talk about it and go down the tried and true, which is the most oppressive route. That's the tried and true, unfortunately, for us. The tried and true is the oppressive, the shut all doors, end all discussions, no more questions, and because you're making everybody uncomfortable. And because apparently this happened to your sister, this happened to your cousin, this happened, and they seem to be coping fine. Well, in order for these relatives of mine to be coping fine, she will think, how much of their soul has been murdered, how much of their self has been repressed, how much death has happened on the inside of a person who looks alive and walks and breathes, in order for her to be strong for everybody else. How much of her is annihilated, a different kind of mahu, if you will, by her insistence on appearing strong for everybody else. This is a silence that people have suffered for too long in silence. And if this is the age where everything is open to discussion and everything is open to question and everything is open to challenge, it's a wonderful thing that must be embraced by the Muslim community before anybody else. Kind of like you all remember how the Prophet, peace be upon him, comes to Medina, and simple things. It doesn't have to be something so dramatic. Well, remember how he came to Medina and he found that the Jews in Medina celebrated Ashura, right? And he's how come you guys celebrate this? Not as an as an interested kind of question. How come you guys celebrate it? And they said, this is the day Allah saved Musa alayhi salam. And what is his first impulse, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam? If we paraphrase a little bit to be outside the cultural mold, the answer essentially translates into, wait a minute, we love Moses more. We want to fast because we love Moses more than, ideally, he's not challenging them that, no, we love him more, you love him less kind of thing. But it's this impulse. It's this, wait, this is goodness. This is a good thing. We must be doing it first. We must compete with you to be doing more of that. We want to fast Ashura too, because that's the day God saved Moses. That is certainly a day to be celebrated. We have more right to Moses. We have this possessiveness of goodness. And hence Allah Jalla Thana'uhu, when He reveals in the Quran, فَاسْتَبِقُوا الْخَيْرَاتِ أَيْنَمَا تَكُونُوا يَأْتِي بِكُمُ اللَّهُ جَمِيعًا. Wherever you are, compete, race with each other in goodness. This is the ethos. This is the driving force that impels the Muslim to say, I want to be at the forefront of that discourse. Even though it may be unpopular right now, but it makes neurological sense. I can talk to 100 or 1,000 psychologists or caseworkers or social workers in the field, and they will validate that what is in the proverbial trenches, in the dark, terrible streets, validates this politically incorrect statement. So are we going to continue to deny reality, people? Or are we going to move into a different dimension and start doing something to address this? Notice this has nothing to do with the religion of the person having these feelings. This has nothing to do with their religiosity or denominational affiliation or the fact that they're Muslims or not. But this is the trust. This is the amana. This is the covenant that the Muslims have. وَكَذَلِكَ جَعَلْنَاكُمْ أُمَّةً وَسَطًا لِتَكُونُوا شُهَدَاءَ عَلَى النَّاسِ. You cannot be witnesses upon humanity if you don't know what they're doing, if you're not engaged on the most intimate levels of human experience, so that you have the ability to make the most intelligible contribution. If you're on the sidelines, if you're absent, which is what unfortunately is partially happening